Not many people realize how big India is. It is the second biggest country following China. And they have over 1 billion people. So it's very important to understand the do's and don'ts of communication because it is more than likely you will have to have an interaction with someone who follows the Indian culture. In this speech, we will be talking about the Indian culture and communications, and not many realize how different each country's communication style is. So we will be going into that to share more in-depth rights and wrongs and how to communicate effectively. In this speech, we will be discussing the Indian people, culture, different forms of communications, and other fun facts and tips to better your communication style with the Indian culture. Now we will get into the main points of the speech. In order to get a good understanding, we first need to learn more about the Indian culture. India is one of the most ethnically diverse places in the world, and it has a very distinctive culture, and this is a product of waves of migration. 46% of its adults remain illiterate. India also generates $4 billion per year and has an annual growth rate of 50%. Meanwhile, more than 300 million Indians live in abject poverty and have no pure drinking water, primary health care, or basic sanitation. That is from the Regional Language Network titled India, People, Culture, Communication, and it is a scholarly article. Even with those statistics listed earlier, it is seen that India is still one of the most accepting cultures and people. Now we'll be getting into the very interesting socializing style of communication. When communicating, it is often seen that Indians will say what you want to hear in order to be polite. And it's best to be patient with them and see what the actions follow after they're done communicating. This is a reference from Culture Crossing Guide titled India, and it is an online database. They also have special rules for socializing. So drinking to an extent is considered unacceptable while smoking is fine. But much like in the United States, men will ask the women out, and the women aren't too forward with their feelings. But one area where they differ in dating is, in quotes, lunch or a movie is fine on a first date. Kissing on a first date may not be acceptable. And that is also from Culture Crossing Guide titled India and is an online database. Another thing that is common is that they like to socialize by going out, going to parties, other people's houses, and going out and doing those fun activities. In summary, as one can tell, there is a lot that goes into Indian culture. We need to understand that it is one of the most diverse countries, and majority of the people practice different styles of communication, and they also have interesting rules that not only people have to follow, but it's a way that you can increase your communication with them. Now we will be getting into the preferences of communication, starting with face-to-face. They prefer to talk face-to-face than any other form of communication, like a phone or an email or a written letter. They like having discussions on cultural and historical topics. It is advisable to avoid bringing up issues concerning touchy subjects such as Kashmir, religion, and Indian politics unless these topics are raised by an elder or by someone as higher up. It is advisable to speak with caution, and especially on these kinds of sensitive topics. Since Indians are very happy people and welcoming people, they don't like to get into disputes over stuff that doesn't necessarily matter to them. And this is referenced from Business Culture titled Indian Business Communication, and it is a website that focuses on how to handle other cultures when you are looking at it from a business standpoint. Direct eye contact is becoming a little more acceptable, but in some parts of the country. So it depends where you're at in the country, but overall, direct eye contact is seen as a sign of respect, and it is especially for women. It is good to give eye contact to their husbands because it shows them that they are listening to them and that they respect them. This is referenced from Culture Crossing Guide. It is titled India, and it is an online database. Indians aren't too cautious on personal space, but will generally touch while talking. But if there is any touching, it is shown as a sign of friendship and affection, so it's not to be, you're not supposed to feel weird about it. You should see it as a sign of respect and friendship. Some face-to-face tips include Indians love to talk about their country, and they will often talk about their history, their family history, and anything about their culture. So when having a conversation, be sure to be attentive and make reactions that are appropriate for what is being said. Another tip is whistling and winking and pointing is considered to be rude, and grasping your ear is a sign of sincerity. This is referenced from the Regional Language Network titled India, People, Culture, Communication, and it is a scholarly article. Now we'll be going into the more business side of Indian culture with communication. So Indians value order, privacy, and punctuality. Their work environments are based on hierarchies, which means that it's based off of title. So an elder will be at the top, and then the lowest is just the normal working person. They also have various levels of management. Because of the impact of the hierarchies through Indian social culture, most senior people present should be, if there's a senior elder or just a senior person in general, you should recognize them first, and then you work your way down by class. This is a sign of respect. India is very big on respect and respecting the elders and respecting the hierarchies. So by doing this, you're showing that you are being respectful. And this is reference from the business culture titled India Business Communication, and it is a website that focuses on business aspects. Another thing that is very important to the Indians is their titles and how you address them. So always present yourself with your title and then wait for them to respond with their title. So then you have a mutual understanding of how you want to be talked to. Another thing is when you receive business cards, you want to grab them with your right hand, and they are handed out after the initial handshake or greeting. And then you always wait to be invited to be seated, and this is just another way that you can show that you respect them and that you want to have a nice civil conversation. This is referenced from the Culture Cross Guide, and it is titled India, and it is an online database. So now that we have taken a look into specific communication examples, you should be able to work on and improve your skills. We mainly looked at face-to-face business relationships and their preferences that follow with those two topics. And then you want to make sure that you keep up with the tips so that you are finding it easy to catch on and not make those silly mistakes. In order to perform verbal communication well and do it at your best ability, it is important to learn the social norms. So first we'll be going into greetings. So it varies gender to gender. So a man to man is a light handshake, and you always state your title. A woman to woman is the same as a man to man. A man to woman is the woman initiate the contact, and they decide if they say their title or not. And then to an elder, you always touch the feet with the right hand, then place on the chest, and then press palms together. But if you're a foreigner, you're not expected to know how to do this, so don't stress about if you're doing this correctly or if you need to do it at all. All these were referenced from Culture Cross Guide, and it is titled India, and it is an online database. Another thing that you should be aware of is gifts. So many Indians are generous and like to show off their homes, families, and give gifts. It is proper to not open a gift in front of the person who gave you the gift, and it is impolite to refuse. This is referenced from the Regional Language Network titled India, People, Culture, Communication, and it is a scholarly article. Another thing with gifts is green, yellow, and red are signs of good colors, and it is good to give a gift that avoid excessive amounts of white and black. This is seen as something that is negative, so you don't want to come across as a negative human being. And you should also stay away from any leather, alcohol, pigskin, or dog-related gifts, because this may go against a religion and may be shown as a sign of disrespect. Safe gifts are chocolate and flowers. And then with flowers, you want to avoid white flowers because that is normally used when you are mourning someone and at funerals or burial sites. And if you give an Indian money, make sure that is an odd number. This is seen as a sign of luck. This is referenced from Culture Crossing Guide titled India, and it is an online database. Some other fun little tidbits include shoes. So you should remove before entering a building and ensure to look what others are doing just in case you don't need to remove those shoes at the certain location. It is done especially in a holy setting or before entering a temple. Feet are considered unclean and you should never touch anyone's feet unless it is an elder because they are seen as clean and cleanly. That was referenced from the Regional Language Network titled India, People, Culture, and Communication, and it is a scholarly article. Another topic that is important to know is gender issues. Depending on where you are in the country, some women have full rights while others have none. So women in rural areas are seen as caregivers, while women in more populated areas are seen as an equal to men. So it's important to know where you're at and what the rules are for that because you do not want to mix that up and somehow offend one of the elders or one of the men, since men are seen in India to be more higher up. Women also aren't allowed to smoke or drink in a traditional setting. So if it just depends where you're at, as with the stuff I said before. So just be aware of those little quirks and cues when you are in India. This is referenced from Culture Crossing Guide, and it is titled India, and it is an online data. Next, I'll be listing off some more tips for effective communication. So it is important to be clear and concise, to speak slowly, reinforce your message, check for understanding verbal and nonverbal cues, and be accepting for feedback, and also ask for that feedback because that's very important. This is referenced from the Regional Language Network titled India, People, Communication, Cultures, and it is a scholarly article. In summary, by knowing social customs, you can communicate almost perfectly. We took a deeper look into greetings, gifts, and other things like shoes and other tips. I hope this section was able to give you the confidence that you needed to go on and grow your abilities with communicating with the Indian culture. So in conclusion, as one can see, Indian culture is something very tricky and should be something that everyone should be informed about. First, we need to start with understanding the Indian culture so that we can move on into the actual communication style and preferences. Lastly, we need to check those social norms and so that you know when you're being disrespectful and that you aren't left in the dark with someone thinking and coming up with assumptions about yourself. Since India is so big, it has a lot of people around the world practicing, and we have to be able to have a conversation with them because otherwise there is no good communication and there just won't be any civil meetings or anything along those lines. So I want to thank you guys for listening and learning more about the Indian culture and their communication style.